Okay, welcome back, third grade. This is our last video for the day, and we're going to work on reading. Last week in reading, we talked about the basic story elements, what they were in a story, what every story needs. And this week, and probably next week, we're going to focus on finding the main idea in a story, learning how to recognize the main idea, and then how to verbalize the main idea. How to find it, how to say what it is. So we're going to talk about that today. What is a deed? If I said, go do a good deed today, would you know what I was talking about? Can deeds be good or bad? They can, can't they? So I'm going to read a story to you. And as the story, Mr. Deed's deed, is read to you, listen to find out if the deed done is good or bad, and why it is done. So the story is called Mr. Deed's Deed. Mr. Deed opened the door of the long limousine for Mrs. McGinty. The feisty old woman hopped into the driver's seat, started up the car, and revved the engine a few times. Sounds good, she said. Mrs. McGinty turned to Mr. Deeds. Just because it's the driver's day off doesn't mean I have to stay home. If I want kumquats for dinner, I can drive myself to get some. She wiggled around and adjusted her seat. Deeds, I'll be back in a half an hour. Mrs. McGinty revved the engine again. Mr. Deeds closed the door and watched the car roar off. When it was out of sight, he ran into the garage, hopped onto a motor scooter, and took off in the same direction Mrs. McGinty had gone. In town, Mr. Deeds headed straight for the farmer's market. It didn't take him long to spot the long black limo parked in front of Jim Henderson's produce booth. Mrs. McGinty was strolling down the line of booths, examining the displays and chatting to people she met. Whenever she turned in the direction of Mr. Deeds, he would hide behind something. Mrs. McGinty took a long time to find what she wanted. She examined every display of kumquats at the market. Finally, she placed a few kumquats in a basket and made her purchase. Mr. Deeds moved in closer. Mrs. McGinty got back into her car and started it up. She revved the engine. Then it happened. Instead of putting the car in reverse, Mrs. McGinty shifted the car into drive and drove straight into Mr. Henderson's booth. Fruit and vegetable baskets exploded like cannons, sending produce in every direction. Mr. Deeds ran to Mrs. McGinty. He caught all the fruit he could along the way. Are you all right, ma'am? Deeds, I didn't know you wanted kumquats too. Why didn't you say something? Well, it's a good thing you're here. I seem to have turned over Jim's baskets again. Can you take care of it for me? Why, certainly. But perhaps I should drive you home. What are you talking about? I can drive. I'll see you at the house. Mrs. McGinty shifted the car into reverse correctly this time and backed away. In a moment, she was gone. Jim Henderson approached Mr. Deeds, shaking his head. That's the second time she's hit my stand this season. Let me guess. It's the driver's day off. It's always something like this whenever the driver has a day off. I'll help you straighten it up and make things right again, said Mr. Deeds. He sighed. I'll speak to her about hiring a driver when her regular one has the day off. She'll listen to me this time, I'm sure of it. Jim chuckled and added one more piece of fruit to the collection piled in Mr. Deed's arms. So, kumquat. That is quite a word, isn't it? So, what is a kumquat? Basically, I was told it is an orange-like fruit that comes from different parts of Asia. So, thinking about the story, do you think Mr. Deeds really wanted a kumquat? Do you think that's why he went to the produce market? What do you think? I don't think. I don't think he wanted one. I think he just wanted to make sure Mrs. McGinty was going to make it to the market and back home safely. So, we're talking about main ideas. To find the main idea, find whom or what the story is about and what is special about that person or thing. So, think about the story that I just read to you. Think about the main idea. What two questions will help you find out the main idea of a paragraph or story? First of all, find who or what the story is about. So, the story I just read you, who would you say the story is about? What two people? And then, what is special about that person or that thing? What did they do? What happened in the story? Let's look at this worksheet here and let's do this together. What's the big idea? Thinking about it. Think about the story, Mr. Deed's Deed. What is the main idea of the story? Circle the answers for these questions to find out. So let's do this together. Whom is the story about? Is it about Mrs. McGinty? Is it about Mr. Deeds? Or is it about Mr. Henderson? So think about who or what is the story about. One thing we can look at is the title, Mr. Deeds' Deed. So who do you think the main character is in this story? Yes, it is going to be right here, Mr. Deeds. So we would say the story is about Mr. Deeds. Yes, Mrs. McGinty and Mr. Henderson was involved in the story, but primarily the story was about Mr. Deeds. What is special about the character? So, what did Mr. Deeds do? Did she is a bad driver and hits the produce stand? Does that refer to Mr. Deeds? No. He goes out of his way to help Mrs. McGinty. Yes. He owns the produce market stand that Mrs. McGinty hit. That would go with Mr. Henderson. But the story is about Mr. Deeds, and what did he do? He goes out of his way to help Mrs. McGinty. So put these two sentences together to give you the main idea. So what we would say is Mr. Deeds, or the main character is Mr. Deeds, and he went out of his way to help Mrs. McGinty. So we're going to keep working on this week, but I want you to remember those two questions. Find who or what the story is about and what is special about that person or thing. Now, we just did this story about Mr. Deeds' Deeds. So what I want you to do is go to Google Classroom, January 13th, and there is a story there that I want you to read. And you are going to pick out the who or what the story is about, and then also what's special about that person. So I want you to think, who is the story about, and what special thing did they do? And that should get you what you need. Have a good day. I will talk to you later.